Hi there, everybody. This is just a short video where I'm going to be talking about my game Scary World, which I put out earlier this year. I made Scary World in a total of 6 months, or sorry, 6 weeks. It was only 6 weeks that I spent making the game, and I really cut myself off after that point, which is something I usually have trouble doing, but I managed to do it this time. Where, yeah, I started, and then 6 weeks later, I basically stopped, and I haven't done a patch since. And the game is in a good place, so I feel good about that. Um, and I did use a lot of assets from past games. That's part of how I was able to do that. Anyways, what is Scary World really quickly? It is a vampire survivor like game, sometimes called a bullet heaven. Although I wasn't as pushing for the bullet heaven thing as much as I was just thinking of it as like a action roguelike with in real time, action roguelike. That's kind of what I was thinking of it as. But I was using Vampire Survivors as kind of my model, the thing I was building from. And I wanted to make a game that was like Vampire Survivors, but that was like the because in Vampire Survivors, like 30 minutes is like the structural period of time that like the game ends in. I think you can go a little further than that. You might even be able to go really a lot further than that, but typically the games end in 30 minutes or less. But 30 minutes is kind of the structure of the game, and I just wanted to just squish that down to about 10 minutes. I felt like that would be better because I found many times when I was playing Vampire Survivors, like I remember playing it on my Steam Deck once, and I had a friend over, and I just had some crazy, and this is like the bullet heaven concept, right? That you get some crazy combo and you're just destroying everything. And it was just like for minutes at a time where I was just invincible. And I literally put the Steam Deck down and just like it was just playing itself. Like my character was just standing there and just killing everything because, they had some crazy combo. So I didn't really want that because I understand like how that's exciting, but like I wasn't really going for that. Of course, you can get moments of that in Scary World for sure, but I wanted less of that. And if it does happen, for it to kind of catch up a little faster. And by just compressing the whole game to 10 minutes, I think we do that pretty well. But the powers are, I think, way less crazy in this, and they're also something that I really wanted to do from a design perspective is every power, to me when I'm designing like asymmetric forces or new powers or new characters or anything like that, I think the natural thing to think about is like, what is this character or weapon or whatever it is, what is it good at? And I think equally as important, maybe more important, is what is the weakness of this thing. And so I really, really tried to make sure that even if a weapon scales in some way, that it always respects and maintains its weakness. Because I think that was one of the problems I had in Vampire Survivors is like when you get a certain couple of weapons like up to a certain point, it's like you don't need anything else. Like all of your zones are covered. You know what I mean? The example that I think about is the Bible, where when it starts, it's protecting one spot at a time as it's going around you. And then it goes away too. It like shrinks into you and it stops. And then it comes back out after a few seconds. So it has a few like vulnerability zones. As you power it up, it eventually becomes just like this super fast spinning sphere around you that never goes away. And so because of that, that's the kind of thing that I really didn't want to have happen in this game. Even if the weapon gets very strong, it always maintains its identity in some way, and it always maintains its weakness in some way. So I don't know that I completely landed that, but that was one of the design goals, and I feel like we did a pretty good job on that. Um, and I also wanted to add some kind of like physicsy element to it. There was a whole kind of thing there where, I really like games like Mario 64, where when you press Mario to go, he doesn't just immediately move at 100% of his max speed, right? It takes him a little bit to build up, and then when he turns direction, it's like, you like there's inertia. And I really like that a lot. I think that kind of inertia is very playful. It makes the game a lot more toy-like, and so I wanted to like make a game that was like Vampire Survivors, but that was more about little physicsy, kind of bouncy interactions. Ultimately, I didn't go terribly far with that. There's a handful of abilities that are that do work that way, that are physics based, and everything. Your character has inertia, and so there's like an inertia quality to many things in the game. But I didn't super explore that too much. One thing I will mention is that this game is also different for me because there wasn't a design phase really. Like I just started making the game, and I had some ideas in mind, but I was basically just implementing, boom, going, and then like changing on the fly when I would figure out, oh, like this thing is too strong or this is not working. I got a lot of feedback on the inertia movement. People kept pressing me and saying like it's too much, it's too, I feel like I'm on ice. And so I kept pulling that back and pulling that back and pulling that back, but it's still in the game. And I did one thing that I did get from some people, I guess because Vampire Survivors is such a thing, is that when you have a hit like that, there is this force that everyone sort of wants a game like if you and part of it is like if you are pitching a game as similar to Vampire Survivors, people kind of want it to be like really similar to Vampire Survivors. So ways in which you deviate, like you have to be very careful with that. And so that was one of those ways that there was a few different things that people said that were like make it more like Vampire Survivors. But the physics and the movement was definitely one of them. However, I do think that I got it to a point by the end of development where it wasn't causing that like negative reaction that it was causing, but it still had that like a little bit of an inertia feel. Something that I guess I learned in the project though is that one of the reasons I think that people were reacting that way is because there isn't animation. Because I was thinking about Mario 64, and his really good animation is always backing up and explaining visually what's going on. Like, if you pictured Mario in Mario 64 as just like a still 3D model sliding around, then it does kind of look like if it takes him a while to turn around, it does look like he's like on ice or something. Like why can't he just turn around, you know? Whereas when you see the animation and he's like his body pose is changing and he's like skidding, it's like okay, I get that now. And that's just a good kind of lesson I think in terms of like how connected design and animation and sound and all these things are. I mean, they all explain each other and people react extremely differently when something has a different animation or a different sound. So that's just something always to keep in mind and try to remember. But yeah, I think that overall, I'm very happy with Scary World. I'm really pleased with it, and I've never made something quite like it before. I mean, I don't think I've made a real-time game other than Jelly Bomber, which is like kind of a weird sort of like puzzler, real-time game. I was working on a real-time sequel to Oro for a while. I think there might have been one or two other things, and obviously back in the day, like when I was making games for QBasic and stuff, I was making shooter games and fighting games and stuff. It was all and platformers. It was all real-time. Um, but I haven't made a real-time game in a very, very long time. So that was an interesting experience. I also think that like in many ways, it's just a more video gamey game. Like I think and it kind of plays into like I'm sort of loving video games again. I think I talked about this in my last podcast episode, my final Clockwork Game Design podcast episode, where I've really like come to love video games again in a way that I haven't in probably 20 years or so. And Scary World, I think, reflects that in that it's like it's a very video gamey video game. In that, I mean, going from superficial details like things like the green shell and this little robot that shoots lasers and just the zaniness of it. It's kind of reminds me of 100 Rogues in some ways, if anyone remembers that game. That it was my first published game. Um, in the zany video gaminess of it, and of course the real time nature of it, and the looseness of it, the looseness of the balance. It's just a very video gamey game. It also made me think a lot about Escape the Omnocronom, which was a game that I released in 2017. And then I sort of like, I only released it, it was weird. I released it on Steam for a short time and then I like pulled it back because I was like, this is just not working. And it's still up on itch, I think. If you are curious about it, I don't really recommend it. It was a failed game design experiment. And basically, Escape the Omnocronom was a turn-based single-player like Dota style of game. So you have lanes and you're pushing out these lanes. I think it's a really cool idea, but it did not work at all. And it was like never fun. It was never fun and never found the fun at all. And I have a bunch of theories for why that is, but one of those theories is it really should have been a real time game. If I had approached Escape the Omnocronom with the basic idea of Scary World, or if I were to take Scary World and like build it into the new Escape the Omnocronom, I think it could actually work pretty well. I don't think there is even close to a market for such a game, but you know, you never know, right? Um, Speaking of marketing, like with Scary World, I did no marketing. I mean, I posted it on social media and you know, I made a trailer and stuff like that, but I did not. I think I paid for Facebook ads for like $5 a day or a week, like very, very little, just something so that maybe someone would find out that it exists. Very little marketing. I just didn't have the money, and also I didn't think the game is really like. I think the game is a great video game. I don't think that it's like an amazing product, especially in like today's market. I think it's like okay. I mean, it's for its $3 or whatever it is. It's good. It's good. It's just not like I didn't see it as like any kind of sure thing in terms of sales. I can let you know that so far as of the taping of this video, we've sold 270 copies of Scary World on Steam, which is not very much at all. In fact, Escape the Omnocronom, which was only up for like not that long, has sold more. It sold like 350 copies, um, which to me, like I think it's so interesting. Like if Scary World, if I had made this really at any other time in history, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago. I mean, some of that's like not fair because you know we got to Vampire Survivors through the whole roguelike revolution that happened and a bunch of other things. You know, bullet hell games, and there was a lot of steps of evolution. You can't, you know, that got us to Vampire Survivors, which is what I base this on. But the industry is just it's really really rough for like hobbyist indie devs. People have been saying this forever. I mean, since 2015, 16, people were talking about the indie dev apocalypse. And I think I always sort of thought like things go up and down. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, for those years of 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, whatever, for those years, it was a really rough industry for indie devs. But I was like, at some point, it's gonna like come back up. But I'm starting to think like, I don't know if it will. Like, I think it's gonna stay like this unless something dramatic happens in terms of like you know legislation and you know breaking up big monopolies and changing the way that things can be sold on the internet and you know rules with free to play games or you know many different things will have to change, or there will have to be some completely um, new way to sell games. I think that's like how indies have gotten in the door is when there's a new thing, like for example when Steam opened up Project Greenlight, or when Steam went open, you know you don't even need Greenlight for the first time, or when the Apple like iPhone App Store appeared. I think like there has to be something like that for indies to ever have a shot again, basically. I mean, other than you know the few indies who just luck the hell out or have a publisher back them up, which then they're not indie anymore. Um, so yeah, this is kind of a sidebar about indie dev and what it's like, but this is my take in my experience, and I've been doing this now for you know I've been an indie dev for since 2007 professionally. So you know that however many years that is, 18 years, right? Something like that. And yeah, it's definitely rougher than ever before. But back to Scary World. I think Scary World is great. Another thing that I wanted to do with Scary World was I wanted to make Vampire Survivors with game design, which is like kind of like a very insulting thing to say because of course Vampire Survivors has game design in it, but there was a lot of things in Vampire Survivors that to me felt like afterthoughts. The thing that pops to my mind most of all was the level design in Vampire Survivors felt really just like underbaked. And I don't know, that might sound like rich coming from the level in Scary World. Scary World has one level, but I did actually think about some stuff and make it kind of structural. Like there's the whole lava concept. That was another thing I wanted to do was create that Burgundian motion of moving things towards their conclusion. So there's just lava coming, which eventually is going to get you. If everything goes on, that makes sure that like the game cannot just go on infinitely. Um, and yeah, so what was I thinking about? Yeah, so there's a bunch of ways in which I think Scary World is like more game designery than Vampire Survivors, and I was really happy that another game designer, a friend of mine, um, Richard Terrell, who was on my podcast many times, great game designer. He runs the design oriented community. And his reaction when he played the game was like, "Yeah, oh, this is cool. This is like Vampire Survivors with game design in it." And so that was kind of cool that like came through. I succeeded in that, at least for him. So, anyways, Scary World is cool. I'm really proud of it. I think it's funny and a fun, silly video game. I'd love to get it on like the Switch store sometime. That would be really cool. But it's kind of a pain to get games on the Switch. So I don't know. I want to go forward and I want to make more small games like Scary World. The next one I'm going to make, going to be starting very soon, is a platformer. I'm going to start it for the KB Games community is doing a game jam, and we're going to make platformers. And you can go learn all about that over at the Discord, which you can find at my website. But yeah, check out Scary World. I hope you enjoy it. And thanks so much for listening to this video and watching, and I'll catch you next time.